Hey everyone, my name is DJ. This is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and I just made a video about the powerful cards in Magic. Cards that have insane amounts of power that will swing in, trample through, destroy your opponents, and all of the synergies that go along with this and how they work so well together. And I was so excited about that video that I needed to make my very own Gruul Power Matters Commander deck. And so this is the deck tech. If you want to check out all of those cool Power Matters cards, go ahead and check on the video right here. But we're going to go through the entire deck, card by card, strategy by strategy, and figure out exactly how to build this and how you can build your own version of this super fun deck. So starting off, one thing that makes this deck super great is that there isn't a singular commander that makes this strategy work. I like this in Gruul because there's a ton of cool cards that synergize with it. You don't just have to run like Minsc and Boo. You can run a ton of different commanders in here, and that's what makes it super customizable. Like you could run Hana and Elena partners, and it will be a fantastic deck. You could run Xenagos, God of Revels, and have it be a fantastic deck. And again, Tana the Bloodsower, a great deck. All of these Gruul cards can make the deck super powerful and make it exactly the way that you want to and tweak it in your own way. So the first thing I want to do is talk about sort of the cards that gave this deck inspiration. These all Power Matters cards. I'm going to go through them quickly because many of you probably watched the video before this where I went into them in a great detail, but I definitely need to highlight them here because these are the core pillars of this deck. These are the cards that I want to be playing, and then all the other cards fit in around it. In fact, that's how I build commander decks, is that I get inspirational cards that I want to play, cards that are fun, cards that synergize with the commander, and that forms up the core of my deck. And then I think about the cards that best support that core strategy. So the core strategy of this deck is I want things to be big. I want to deal a lot of damage, and I never want to run out of gas. Okay. Minsc and Boo Timeless Heroes is 2 red-green for a 3 loyalty planeswalker. When it enters the battlefield or at each upkeep, it makes a 1/1 Boo. It's a hamster with trample and haste. You can +1 on Minsc and Boo to put 3 +1/+1 counters on a creature. It's got to have trample or haste, which means it can automatically go on Boo, but it could also go on some other big trampley or hasty creature that you have in this deck. -2, sacrifice a creature. When you do, Minsc and Boo Timeless Hero deals X damage to any target, where X is the creature's power. If the sacrificed creature is a hamster, draw X cards. Boo is the only hamster in this deck, unfortunately, so you'll only be drawing cards if you sacrifice Boo, but you're totally fine sacrificing just a big dumb creature that's had huge power just to take someone out of the game, or remove a relevant creature. Like, the utility on this is fantastic. It's also kind of nice that it can be your commander. That's super fun. Let's mention the other legendary Gruul cards in here, so maybe you can have in your mind about if you'd rather run Minsc and Boo or something like Helana and Elena Partners. Helana and Elena Partners is 2 red-green for a 2/3 human ranger with first strike and reach. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put X +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control, where X is Hana and Elena's power. That creature gains haste until end of turn. So any creature coming in and getting haste is super duper good, because if you're creating an attacking deck, you want your creatures attacking as soon as possible, and giving them haste lets them attack, kind of above curve, which is great. I also like the distribution of counters, because if you buff Hana and Elena, then you can give permanent buffs to other creatures. So great synergy with Power Matters there. Of course, there's Tana the Bloodsower right beneath it. This has the advantage of being able to be paired with another partner. So you can dip into other colors, or you can just double down and have an extra starting card in your command zone hand by having another partner. Maybe some mana ramp or something else, who knows. But Tana the Bloodsower is 2 red-green for a 2/2 elf druid with trample. I love trample. Whenever Tana the Bloodsower deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green sapperling creature tokens. I mentioned in my previous video, that many is like such powerful text. Whenever you have that many, you just get that much more advantage by having a greater power and augmenting it, because that many is designed to be balanced with its current power, like 2/2. But if this becomes a 4/4 and then an 8/8, and it's creating 8 sapperling creatures every single time it swings in and deals that damage, that's crazy. So you can see how cards like this and any card with that many gets a little bit out of hand. Let's also talk about Xenagos, God of Revels. This is going to have a similar feel to Halana and Elena because it also grants a power boost and haste. Xenagos, God of Revels is 3 red-green for a 6/5 legendary enchantment creature god. It's got indestructible, which is kind of nice. Could just be a enchantment sitting there on the battlefield. It doesn't turn into a creature unless you got enough pips out on the battlefield. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another creature gains haste and gets +X/+X until end of turn, where it's that creature's power. Whew. So these are some of the ones that I've specifically called out. They're red and they're green and they deal with power and they're fun, but it's not the only inspiration in this deck. Because, Xenagos has been around for forever. I've seen it, I've played against it. It's a known quantity. I really got kind of inspired by Zopandrel, Hunger Dominus. Zopandrel is 5 green for a 4/6 Phyrexian Horror with reach. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. Whoa, it's just like 7-drop, big damage across the board. I also love that it's got the ability to gain indestructible. It can sort of be that onboard enchantment, kind of like Xenagos is. Phyrexian green, sacrifice 2 other creatures, put an indestructible counter on Zopandrel, Hunger Dominus. Oof. Love it. This gave me another big idea because I know that there is the enchantment Unnatural Growth. Unnatural Growth is basically the same thing. 1 green for an enchantment at the beginning of combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. So I was thinking, like, whenever you have all these power doublers and they synergize together, you get a dinky creature, a 5/5, let's say. Not that dinky, but in Commander, it's like fine. You double that to 10, you double that to 20. And suddenly those 2 doubling effects make the creature exponentially bigger. I mean, you double that again, you're doubling to 40. And so you need a lot of these creatures on the battlefield, but you can see how just some small board presence, when doubled and increased and augmented, can get out of control. And you can truly get that big battle cruiser magic that's really fun. There's another new card that I kind of liked. It was Luca, Bound to Ruin. Luca, Bound to Ruin is 2 red-green and then a Phyrexian red or green. For a 5 loyalty planeswalker, Luca. It's completed. You can +1 to add red-green, spend this mana to cast only creature spells, and activate the abilities of creatures. This is great because this is a solid creature deck. We want to have creatures on the battlefield, attack with them, double their power. Creature synergies are there. So a mana dump or mana producer for creatures is great. -1, create a 3/3 Phyrexian beast creature with Toxic 1. Don't have very many toxic synergies in here, but you can always use a beast on the battlefield. But most importantly, you can drop Luca -4, and then it deals X damage, divided as you choose among any number of target creatures or planeswalkers, where X is the greatest power among creatures you controlled as you activated this ability. Whew. You can have some big creatures in this deck. Like I said, 20/20s, 40/40s. Luca can be this value planeswalker, tick up, make some mana, tick down, make a beast, whatever. But in the end of the day, it's got this upside of this one-sided crazy board wipe that I want to see. And so with all of these cards coming together, how do we best support this Power Matters strategy? Well, we're going to look for everything that doubles the power or has some sort of power augmentation. Most of those are creatures and we want a high creature count. So we're going to find ways to support that creature count and make sure that we have all the creatures that we need in this deck. And if we're running not a creature, then it better be a really powerful, impactful spell. I'm looking at you, Unnatural Growth. So let's talk about some of the cards that care about power mattering. Let's get some of these other big power spells out of the way. We have Nath of the Dire Hunt. Forgot about this. Another legendary creature that could theoretically be your commander. 2 green for a 3/3 legendary human warrior. Whenever one or more creatures you control fight or becomes blocked, draw a card. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 Gruul. If you do, double target creature's power until end of turn. That creature must be blocked this combat if able. Great activated ability, doubling power, fantastic. And then of course there's Pathbreaker Ibex, which is a great overrun effect, but it deals with power. Pathbreaker Ibex is 4 green for a 3/3 goat. Whenever Pathbreaker Ibex attacks, creatures you control gain trample and get +X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. That could be a lot of power because you're doubling and doubling power, and this sort of doubles it as well. Another way to sort of double the power of your creatures is by having more than one combat, especially if you have things that trigger at the beginning of combat, like this unnatural growth at the beginning of each combat, or this Zoppendrel, at the beginning of each combat. So if you have an extra combat, like on this Karlach Fury of Avernus, you get to double again and double again. Karlach Fury of Avernus is 5 and a red for a 5/4 Tiefling Barbarian. Whenever you attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap all attacking creatures. They gain first strike until end of turn. After that phase, there's an additional combat phase. First strike is great because it makes it super hard for your opponents to have any sort of profitable blocks with your big creatures. There are a ton of different ways in red to give extra combat phases and extra combat steps. I didn't include them all. I do really like some of these, though. I've included Karlach right there. Love Karlach. I've been loving Bloodthirster. 5 and a red for a 6/6 demon with flying and trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, untap it. After this combat step, there's an additional combat phase. Bloodthirster can't attack a player it has already attacked this turn. Okay, one thing to notice about this one is it does grant another combat step. You will be able to trigger and double things up and have all those beginning combat triggers, but it only says untap it. That refers to the Bloodthirster, not untap your entire team. So the only thing that can attack is things like Bloodthirster or things that didn't attack before, or, things with vigilance. And so this is a little bit more limited, but I love the idea of getting 3 attacks in at 3 different people. Just imagine the play pattern. Like you attack one person because it's got flying and trample. You get through. Awesome. You get another combat step. But then, you get another trigger. It gets doubled again. So maybe it's 12 the first time you attack, 24 the second time you attack, and then 48 the third time you attack. So you do a bunch of damage to one player, you get through, you deal a ton more to the other player, and you kill the other. I love the upside on Bloodthirster. So much fun. And then I've also included Morag Fury of Akum. I like this one because it says each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it attacked this turn. Power matters. So I'm going to pick the power synergistic extra turn effect. It's got landfall whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. If it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. So it does untap everything, which is great. And then again, you can just look for extra turn spells, extra turn effects, and include them if that's the road you want to go down. So tons and tons of ability to expand or customize this deck when it comes to extra turns. Now, one other way to get double the power out of your creatures is by giving them double strike. So a huge, powerful creature, double striking is just gross. And then Embercleave is like the poster child of that. Embercleave is 4 red, but it can have its mana cost reduced. It has flash, which is great because it can go on the exact creature you need it to. +1/+1, double strike, and trample. Oh gosh, man. I love that it gives trample because we need evasion in this deck. I've mentioned it before. I'm going to keep mentioning it. You don't want your creatures to be chump blocked. So trample is going to be key. Double strike, fantastic. I love it. Let's talk about two-handed axe, the other piece of equipment in here. Of course, there's lots of equipment that you can choose. I had Mage Blade in here for a while. I had Swords of, I had maybe thought about some of the other double striking equipment, but I really wanted to keep the equipment and the slimmer because I was hoping to maybe have a little bit more artifact hate. We'll get into that when I talk about some of the other ways to support this strategy. Two-handed axe is kind of 2 spells. Two-handed axe is 1 red for an instant adventure. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Great, exactly what we want. But it's also just an axe. 2 red for an axe equipment. Whenever equipped creature attacks, double the power until end of turn. Great, we got exactly what we need. Double strike, double power. Fantastic. And then, of course, there are some instants that do the same thing. Temur Battle Rage, very similar to Double Strike and Trample. perfect. And then Unleash Fury, just double the power. These are great instant speed combat tricks that can just deal a lot of damage out of nowhere. Pick that one creature that we've already doubled a couple times to get that damage through. Berserk is phenomenal because it's just a single green and it gives plus X+O, where X is its power, and trample. Yes, the creature is going to be destroyed at the end of the turn. We don't care. We just want to get that damage through, and doubling up that power in combat, giving a trample so that we get through. Oh, so amazing. Again, you can see how all of these cards sort of come together. Let's cover some of the non-creatures in here and see how synergistic they are and how much they matter. In the artifacts, we talked about Two-Handed Axe and Embercleave, but then there's Soul Ring. Soul Ring is fantastic. This is a big mana deck. Our curve is pretty high. We've got a ton of 5 drops, a bunch of 6 drops, even a 7 drop. We're not playing this 12 drop. We're going to play this 12 drop for green. But we've got a lot of pretty big cards in here. So Soul Ring is going to be great. We'll pay attention to our mana ramp a little bit later. But there's a reason why we don't have a lot of artifact-based mana ramp. We have them in creatures because we're rewarded for playing creatures. Okay. Two-Handed Axe, Embercleave I mentioned. The Great Henge. Look at this mana ramp and card draw right there. Oh, it's perfect because we can oftentimes play this for green, meaning that it's not a huge burden on our mana. And then tap it for 2 green, gain 2 life. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield in your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Again, make things bigger, double up that power. Fantastic. And then draw a card. We need a lot of card draw in this deck because in order for this deck to work, we have to play creatures. We have to turn them sideways. And Commander's a game where you're going to get board wiped. You're just going to get board wiped. And so you need to have enough card draw to make sure that you can survive that board wipe so you can rebuild and keep going. And so we're going to go through a little bit later and count up all of the card draw effects that we have in this deck. And you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, this deck is chock full of them, because they are. And the Great Henge is one of your better versions. Okay, then let's go to these enchantments. I already mentioned a natural growth, but I also want to mention another card draw spell in Greater Good. Greater Good is 2 green for an enchantment. Sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power, then discard 3 cards. This just sits on the battlefield, and as soon as you have this gigantic creature that's gone in and done a ton of damage, you sacrifice it, draw 20 cards, discard 3. Oh my gosh, it's so good. In fact, do I have, I usually don't like Reliquary Tower in decks, but you know what? Reliquary Tower definitely needs to be in this deck because I can see us drawing huge amounts of cards with effects like Greater Good. Then let's talk about cards like Garruk's Uprising. I mentioned before that card draw is important, but then also trample is important too. If it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Yes, we will, because we're going to often have big creatures in this deck. Creatures you control have trample, solid, and it works really well with this specific commander of Minsc and Boo, because suddenly we can put counters on anything, which is great. And then also, whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield and you control, draw a card. Great. So we kind of have the Great Henge drawing us cards, Greater Good and Garruk's Uprising all right there. And then of course we're going to see this again imitated in the other creatures. And these are going to trigger a lot because we have 42 creatures, a creature focused deck. Okay. Let's talk about the last enchantment that we have. It's Fight Rigging. Fight Rigging is another Power Matters card. And it might be an easy cut in this deck, but I think it's just really fun. Fight Rigging is 2 and a green for Hideaway 5. It means that we can go 5 deep, pick a card from among them, and that's one of the cards that we might be able to cast for free. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So it could let you cheat something really, really big into play. I think that this could be an easy cut because I've actually built this deck to be not insane. Like, yeah, there's a bunch of 6 drops up here, but odds are when you have 5 cards, you're going to hit like, one of these 3 drops or, a land or something like that. Like it's not obscenely large. And we don't have control over what we hit with Fight Rigging, unless we have very specific cards. So I just like it because it synergizes with power. This could be an easy cut for you. So that's the enchantments. Pretty good, right? So we've got all of these things that synergize with it. Because I'm running very few artifacts and enchantments, this could open up opportunities to have hate for artifacts and enchantments. I have included in this deck a Bane of Progress. Bane of Progress is going to be really good at just wiping out all the artifacts and enchantments. But of course, there's nothing wrong with running like a Collector Oof or a Shatterstorm or any other just like artifact and enchantment hate. Because again, if everyone is running creature hate like those board wipes, and you've built your deck to have a minimal number of artifacts and enchantments, like you should be running the artifact and enchantment hate. Wipe everyone else's board away. So I wouldn't be angry with some of those effects, a Brotherhood's End or, again, that Shatterstorm. And I think that those are going to be really good and could up your win percentage against a lot of different decks. Okay. Let's talk about the instants and sorceries. The sorceries, let's start with sorceries because we've got Turn Timber Symbiosis, which is kind of a free inclusion and great in a creature deck. Whenever we can include these double-faced cards that are lands too, they're just going to be fantastic. So we have, Turn Timber Symbiosis, Balaged Recovery, and even Bushwhack. Bushwhack I have as a land, essentially. It can easily get that basic land, even fix for the number of mountains that we have, just really good. But then also we have big creatures, and so it could just be a 1 mana removal spell. Great. But I have Bushwhack as a land in here. Same thing with Balaged Recovery. Same thing with Turn Timber Symbiosis. So it's not like I'm sacrificing a creature by including these enchantments because I'm already have a reduced land count. My lands are at 35, but if you start adding all the other ones, 36, 37, you get up to the right amount of lands. So what sorceries do I have in here? Well, I've got Chandra's Ignition. That's one that I've specifically chosen. Chandra's Ignition is 3 red for a sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. So each other creature could be bad because we plan on having multiple creatures on the board. But if we have a big enough creature, this basically one-shots each opponent. Like I was talking about a 20/20, easily a 20/20, or a 40/40. Chandra's Ignition is just 5 mana, kill everything and everyone. It's great. And then, of course, we can just put this on one of our smaller creatures to create like a more controlled board wipe, leaving our bigger creatures around, but taking out our opponents. There's just a lot of flexibility with this card. So I like that. You have to be really careful because it does say target creature you control. So if someone takes out your creature, then you're not going to be dealing any damage to anyone. So be careful. And then the other enchant or sorcery that we have is Rishkar's Expertise. Oh, just one of the best Power Matters card draw spells that we have. Rishkar's Expertise is 4 green for a sorcery. Draw cards equal the greatest power among creatures you control. Oh my God. Can we deck ourselves in this deck? I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be able to deck myself in this deck. Just so much card draw. Even if we have like a 5 or a 6 drop out there, just so good. And then it's not even a huge investment of mana because you can immediately follow it up with casting a spell mana value 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. And you will have the ability to follow it up with a creature that will impact the board or further your mana development, something like that. So clearly the sorceries here are definitely pulling their weight. Let's talk about those instants because the instants a lot of them are combat tricks that can go along with that Power Matters strategy. We already talked about Berserk, doubling the power, giving that trample. We talked about Temur Battle Rage with double strike and trample, Unlash Fury, doubling the power. I want to talk about Kazul's Fury and Kalani Ambush because these are also double face cards that have a very low inclusion value. We want high mana count, and so these cards could be exceptionally good. Let's talk about Kalani Ambush first. Target creature you control fights a creature you don't control. We talked about how fight in this deck could just be just clean, simple removal. And so this is kind of like another copy of Bushwhack. And so love it. Have it in the deck. If it's in the late game and I don't need my land drops, this can be a solid removal spell. In the early game, yeah, I just play it. It's going to be great. Kazul's Fury is a fling effect. Oh my, let's read it. 2 and a red for an instant. As additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature. Kazul's Fury deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. That 20/20, that 40/40, sacrifice it, fling it at your face, Kazul's Fury it at your face, you're dead now. This is a game-ending card when you have so many creatures with such big power. Oh my gosh. Ram Through. We talked about these fight effects being incredibly powerful. Ram Through is a mix of a fight effect, but then also quite possibly one of those damage dealers like Kazul's Fury to the face. Ram Through is 1 and a green. For an instant, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. If that creature you control has trample, they might have trample. The excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. That's great. That's great. Just trample over, kill something, trample through. Just great. And then I've also included the new card, Tyvar's Stand. Tyvar's Stand is X and a green for an instant. Target creature you control gets +X/+X, gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Look, you just might need to answer something or sink a bunch of mana into it, and so Tyvar's Stand is going to be great. Of course, you could have any sort of protection effect here. You could have Heroic Intervention, which might even be better because it saves your whole board from a board wipe, something like that. But when you do have this commitment to the battlefield, then having some level of protection could be good. And these all, like I said before, are infinitely customizable. You know, I can mention that Heroic Intervention. You could have a different effect like a Primal Might. You know, that's another fight effect that can pump power and toughness. You can have mass regeneration to protect your board, like a invigorating something or other. I don't know. But there's a ton of different ways where you can sort of tweak this to your metagame. You know, do you need more protection? Do you need more aggression? But this is the way that I've built it, as kind of like a balanced way, and also trying out Tyvar's Stand with that fun power-based synergy. So we've gone over all of the artifacts, the enchantments, the instants, the sorceries, a lot of the synergies that we have here. So now we get to talk about our creature base. And our creature base is robust. Like I said before, 42 creatures, lots of creature-based strategies. And the reason why we're such a high creature count is because of cards like the Great Henge, like Garruk's Uprising, like the mana we gain by Greater Good and the doubling effects and all of the stuff. The more creatures we have, the better. And so I've decided to go with creature-based ramp. Look, the best ramp that we have is putting lands onto the battlefield. We all know that. But if you just cast a Farseek, you know, you're not actually, you're not synergizing with anything else. Like a Farseek late in the game is bad, but an Elvish Mystic late in the game could draw a card off your Great Henge, you know, could draw a card off of your, you know, could give a counter on your Champion of Lambolt, could be a place where you can equip your Embercleave or your two-handed axe. Like it's got a lot more utility in this style of deck. So I've gone with the Mana Dorks, even though they are more prone to be wiped away. I've gone with the classic 3 1-drop Dorks. I think I might need to run something like Birds of Paradise in here. Birds of Paradise is 0 power, so I don't love it. I really wish there was some sort of creature that had a bigger power, but also was on 1. I don't know what I'm asking for. Like a 2/1 for 1 that tapped for mana. Like that's gross. Can't do that. But I am paying attention to the power of these Mana Dorks. That's why I really like Paradise Druid or Lotus Cobra, because they can actually attack. Like Lotus Cobra can ramp and attack at the same time. I think that one of the best ones that we have here is like Topiary Stomper. Oh, I love Topiary Stomper so much because it's 1 green for a 4/4 vigilance. Whenever it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Great. Land on the battlefield. Exactly what I want. Topiary Stomper can't attack or block unless you have 7 or more lands. Fine. You know, when I get to 7 or more lands, that's when I'm casting my Zoppendrol and all this other big stuff. And that's when Topiary Stomper can actually get big and start doing damage. So I love this card. And so every other card is kind of like a poor interpretation of that, like Wood Elves. You know, I like it fine, but it's a 1/1. You know, all of these ones that tap for mana are fine. Let's go through them. The 1-drops, again, could be cut or could be expanded upon. Goblin, an Acromancer. I do really like the idea of casting multiple spells per turn because we do have things like hasty creatures or creatures that are granted haste or combat tricks. And so when you're gonna like cast more than one spell a turn, reducing the mana cost can be really good. Because Goblin, an Necromancer, could have a downside. Like it doesn't reduce the mana cost of any of these Elvish Mystics. So it's definitely a little bit more limiting. Elysian Caryatid can tap for 2 sometimes. Incubation Druid can get bigger, which means it can also attack pretty well. There's also the added synergy of Minsk and Boo putting a +1/+1 counter on the Incubation Druid so that it can actually tap for more. I love that strategy. Lotus Cobra, again, can give us mana while attacking. Paradise Druid, could be a cut, but I really like the 2 power there. I also like that it is hexproof because you could be able to make it big or equip things or augment it in some way and then attack in while it's already had all that stuff happen. Secure Tribuilder, again, fantastic. Not going to be able to attack with it and ramp at the same time because you have to sacrifice it, but it is going to trigger and, get those sort of Beast Whisperer triggers, those creature entering the battlefield triggers, which is really good. Zerta Druid. Oh gosh, one of my favorites. Just imagine a mana dork that just lightning bolts every single turn. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. You tap it, 1 damage to each opponent. In damage-based decks, this can easily just deal like 3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage. Like that stuff adds up, and every damage can sometimes matter when it comes to these decks. Atlan Jackal. This is fun too. 1 red-green for a 2/2 human Tyrannid Scout. Trample Haste. It's got Skilled Outrider. Whenever Atlan Jackal deals combat damage to a player, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So this has to do with the ramp-based strategy that synergizes with attacking. Great. I love it because I want to attack anyways, so I'm going to ramp along with it. I mean, we also had another new card, not exactly early ramp, that will go along with that, and that's Primeval Herald. Primeval Herald is 3 and a green for a 3/1 elf scout with trample. Whenever Primeval Herald enters the battlefield or attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Yeah, so definitely fun ways of getting lands on the battlefield for a big mana deck. Let's keep going with sort of the 3 and 4 drop mana creatures because some of them synergize very well with these power matter strategies. Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia is 2 and a green for a 2/3 legendary human druid scout. Tap to add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells or activate the abilities of a creature or creature card. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 5 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia and untap it. Oh, 2 mana. Granted, it's only for creatures, but 2 mana. And if you cast a big creature, you get to untap it and cap it again. Oh. We've also got Rayundi Behemoth Caller, 2 and a green for a 1/3. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 5 or greater, that creature enters the battlefield with X additional +1/+1 counters on it, where X is its mana value -4. Oh, big creature tapper, fantastic. Creatures you control with 3 or more +1/+1 counters on it have haste, and it adds a green mana to your mana pool. Oh, goes along with this big mana. Speaking of big mana cards, Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, 1 green for a 2/3. Whenever a big creature enters the battlefield, it's bigger than everything else, you draw a card. Green, tap, add X mana of any combination where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Big mana strategy. I need to go through and count. I might have too much mana in this deck. Just so much good stuff in this deck. Oh, I love it. One other way to get lands on the battlefield is Silverback Elder. It's another card that synergizes with the fact that this is a big creature heavy deck. 2 green. Yep. For a 5/7 Ape Shaman. Whenever you cast a creature spell, choose 1. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Fantastic. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto battlefield tap, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Great ramp. Whenever you cast creature spells, just always be accelerating into more mana. And then you gain 4 life, which is usually not used in Commander, but when it is, you kind of need it. Okay, so we have got all of this ramp. Let's count it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I can't call this ramp up here. 18, like 19, maybe even 20 pieces of ramp with Luca and Domri. So I think that you can cut 2 of them for something good. Whew. It's just a little bit, that's a lot. That is a lot. But I have this many right here because I think that it is that important to hit my ramp. And I do think I have enough sort of other things that synergize along with them to make them worthwhile. I'm going to test it out and see. I could probably cut 1 or 2 pretty easily. All right, I do want to mention one other piece of ramp, and I think I'm going to include it in this deck. It's a Marwyn the Nurturer. Whenever an elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwyn, add X, or add an amount of green mana equal to Marwyn's power. But we have other ways of augmenting power, and so this can get big without very many elves. So I think I want to add this to the deck. And then I also want to go in, and I think I want to get rid of... Do I want to get rid of these 1-mana elves? Not really. I do want to accelerate in. I think I'm going to get rid of... Paradise Druid. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of Paradise Druid. And what else am I going to get rid of? Wood Elves. Gosh, Wood Elves is so good. I can't believe I'm getting rid of it. But I'm going to get rid of them. And I'm going to put in something else sort of at the top end. When you go through and you realize like, oh my gosh, I have 20 pieces of removal or of ramp, then you just got to go through and figure out what you need. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of, yeah, I think I need to get rid of something else. I might even get rid of Eternal Witness. I don't think I need Eternal Witness. I think I might have like a bigger effect. It may be even like some sort of bigger, splashier over the top thing. And I'm going to get rid of, Eternal Witness and that one too. Okay, good. And then I'm going to start paying attention to other cards that I could have as I go through here. All right. So already at 99 cards and can add one additional one. Okay. So I could still probably cut another. I feel like if I go down to 2 of these 1-drops, it's like, why even bother? Like the odds of drawing them in the first turn are already so low. Like maybe I should just cut all of these. I don't even know. I've gone out of my way not to have very many tapped lands because I want to be able to curve out with my mana dorks. And so that's something that I'll definitely pay attention to. You know what? We'll think about this a little bit later, but I think I definitely want something else a little bit more up here at the top end. But we'll see. We'll do some other counts as we go along. All right. So that's the mana ramp. And we can see that we have a lot going up into the top end here. Let's talk about, we have 2 Defiler of Vigors. Woo! I just got another card back. Okay. But let's talk about Defiler of Vigor because that's one of the cards that's going to give us more power and more mana. So it's a great transition. Not only can this give us a big mana advantage, but it can also sort of like turn some of our dinky creatures into big, powerful creatures that can do a lot of damage. Let's go in and delete one of those Defilers of Vigor. And oh yeah, I'm going to have a new card to add to this. I love it. We're going to figure out what else we need. There's one of the Defilers of Vigor. Get out of here. Okay. So now we have 2 art cards to add, and I've already been very generous with the lands. 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. 40 seems pretty good. So I don't think that I need another land. I might need another land. Who knows? Okay. So let's talk about all of the bigger sort of like over the top power matters strategies that we have in here. And so let's talk about Champion of Landhold. Champion of Landhold gives everything this insane unblockability as its power gets bigger and bigger. Champion of Landhold is 1 green for a 1/1 human warrior. Creatures with power less than Champion of Landhold's power can't block creatures you control. So if we put a couple +1/+1 counters on this, we get it a little bit big, then suddenly nothing of ours can be touched. We just have unblockability. We come in, we kill people. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield in control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of Landhold. So again, creature strategy that goes along with other creatures, fantastic. Krenko, Tin Street Kingpin. 2 and a red for a 1/2 legendary goblin. Whenever Krenko Tin Street Kingpin attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to Krenko's power. Woo! This is great, especially because we have the ability to put a ton of counters on it, make its power bigger and bigger and bigger. So basically when we will start off the turn and we'll like double its power, put a +1/+1 counter on it, make a ton of different creatures. And then suddenly we have this gigantic board. Just great. Reclamation Sage is just the card we need to interrupt our opponents. But maybe I could look at something else. If I could add a second Bane of Progress, I think I might. So maybe I'll look for some other disruption that can go along with that strategy. I already mentioned the Behemoth, Selvala, the Stomper, Beast Whisperer. This effect is great, and we're going to go through and count our creatures, our creature draw effects a little bit later. Goreclaw, this is again, it's like big mana reduction on big spells. Just saw, where'd you go, Goreclaw? There you go, Goreclaw. Okay, so mana reduction is great, but more importantly, +1/+1 and trample. The trample is important because we need big creatures to be able to get through for damage. Mention Halan Elena, mention Nath, mention the Herald, mention Tana, Toski. If you have a creature deck that's attacking, Toski's just a huge card draw effect. Talked about Defiler and its ability to grow inconsequential creatures into things that are big. God Eternal Ronus, doubling the power. Karlach, giving that extra damage. Creature synergies. Terror of the Peaks. You know, if we have creatures entering the battlefield that are big, Terror of the Peaks can just deal that direct damage. Again, this isn't going to really super synergize with a lot of our power strategies because, you know, our power usually doubles at combat. It's like a trigger for creatures that are on the battlefield, but we're still going to play like 5 drops and want to deal 5 damage wherever we want. So I like Terror of the Peaks a lot. Xenagos, doubling that power. Bane of Progress. Woo, take out those artifacts and enchantments. Bloodthirster, the extra combat. Hydra Omnivore. If we're talking about dealing a ton of damage, Hydra Omnivore is going to be able to do that. 4 green for an 8/8. When it deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. There's almost always someone in Commander that just doesn't play those creatures or taps out or has some is open. You know, so if 2 of your opponents are, you know, turtling up, impossible to get through, you just double the power of Hydra Omnivore. Double the power of Hydra Omnivore. Attack, swing in for 32. Oh, so nice. So nice and so fun, and just a great effect. Talked about the extra combat damage, talked about the doubling power. Rurk Thar. Okay, Rurk Thar is my way of fighting those non-creature decks. Again, play a lot of decks where people are going to wipe your boards, they're going to cantrip, they're going to play a lot of spells, and we're going to get around that because Rurk Thar is going to, number 1, attack each turn if able. Great. Let's do it. Let's attack all the combats that we can. So we're going to keep attacking because that's what we do with a big 6/6. But whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, boom, 6 damage to the face. Just great. And of course, we do have some non-creature spells, but look at all of them. None of them are really coming after Rurk Thar. Like Rurk Thar is going to be on the battlefield before we, you know, cast all of these other things. And then if we have to take 6 occasionally, you know, to unleash fury or kill someone, like it's going to be fine. We're going to be fine. And then Galta, we're basically going to play a 12/12 for 2 green. For just green, it's going to be great. I already mentioned Luca, but then Domri. I've included Domri in here because number 1, it synergizes with power, and I like that. It's mana ramp. That's good. I don't even know if I counted this as mana ramp, but anyways, I like that it can't be countered. That's really, really good for me. And I think that if you have a lot of decks where you're worried about things getting countered, then there are different cards that you can include that can help that out. And Domri might be one of them. So it's kind of representing those cards, whether it's Allosaurus Shepherd or, you know, some other card that fights those blue decks. And then also target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Again, removal. We can fight very, very easily in this deck. All right. So I've gone through, let's go through the mana, I guess. It's got a lot of lands. Any land that can produce more mana to get up to these 5s and 6 drops are going to be really great. But then we also have Kessig Wolfrun, one of the best lands in this deck because it gives more power to your creatures. Mosswort Bridge is going to be a free spell because we're going to have a big creature. Reliquary Tower, we have a lot of card draw. We'll go over that in 1 second. Rogue's Passage, we're going to have big creatures. This gives them that evasion. A lot of land. But then we got, where is it? Skarg Rage Pits. This is going to give +1/+1, but more importantly, trample. Very good. Yavimaya Hollow, this is one of the more expensive cards. Like if you look at here, we have some expensive cards in here. I should put in Gaia's Cradle or take out Taiga if I'm doing a good job in this deck. So basically right now it's not great. So I should take out the Taiga and put in a budget land. Or if you can afford a Taiga, you can probably afford or proxy a Gaia's Cradle. So that should be in here as well. Not this weird mix and match of a $300 card and then not. Same thing with Yavimaya Hollow. You don't need a $76 card right there. You don't need Wooded Foothills. You have plenty of land fixing in this deck. We can go, I do like this spell on a land right here for Boseiju Who Endures. Yeah, sorry. That's $40. Ancient Tomb, you don't need $70. So this deck, like let's look at the most expensive cards in this deck and find out, which ones are worth spending money on. I don't think you need Berserk, so get rid of it, All right. Minskin Boo over 10. Yeah, that would be good, especially if it's your commander. Selvala might be worth the 16. Toski is worth the 12. Ugh. Okay, Terror of the Peaks is not worth the 36 in this deck. Get rid of it. Man, Karlach got expensive. I bought a ton of copies of this for very cheap. Man, people were sleeping on Karlach. Love that it's gone up. No, don't love that it's gone up in price, but it's been good. So, get the Great Henge. Oh no, the Great Henge is so expensive, everyone. Oh, be careful. The price right here is shown is $1,000, but no, it's not. Get rid of this stupid card. Get rid of this mana base. Proxy the mana base, and then suddenly it becomes worth it. Get rid of the mana base and get rid of the Great Henge, and then suddenly this is becoming like a reasonable deck. So you can definitely build this on a budget. All right, let's look at the card draw on this, because I think we have more than 10 really strong card draw, not just big, good effects. So Minskin Boo, drawing 4 off the hamster is solid. That's 1. And then we go down over here and we've got some things that trigger, like we've got Rundi and Selvala. Let's call that, 2 together because they trigger sometimes off of big creatures. We've got Beast Whisperer, just gonna be procking all the time. We've got Nath that's going to basically draw every time we attack, which is fantastic. Toski drawing every time we attack, which is just great. Silverback Elder, that is kind of like, let's just move on. Going on, we've got the Great Henge, drawing cards all the time. Then we've got over here supplemented with Garrick's Uprising, Greater Good. Going over here to Return of the Wild Speaker and Rishkar's Expertise. So we've got 10 big, powerful card draw effects in this deck. Love it. All right, I've decided to run Cankerbloom. This has a big power of 3, comes down early, so it doubles really well. But then also you can sacrifice it to get rid of that artifact, enchantment, or proliferate. This works really well with Minskin Boo because I can get that extra counter on it and Minsk, and works with some of my other cards in there. So Cankerbloom, go ahead and get in my deck. I'm also going to put Guardian Project back in because if I have this high of a creature count, I think I just want more cards for every single creature. So get back in Guardian Project. I'm also wondering if I should put Garrick Primal Hunter in. I had it in at one point in time, but I took it out because I thought 5 mana for drawing all those cards. I feel like I have this effect already. I kind of like it though. No, I'm not gonna put that in. I also think I'm going to add sort of a second Toski with Orin Frostfang. And one of the reasons why is because, again, I have a ton of creatures with big, big power. I also have a lot of trample in this deck. And trample, Death Touch, is insane because you only have to assign 1 point of damage to kill the creature and the rest tramples over. So Orin Frostfang, I'm going to let you in and see how you do. So I also really like Varchild, Betrayer of Keldor, because it says that many. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player creates that many 1/1 red survivor tokens, and then you get them when Varchild leaves. I don't think this is the best creature, but I love it. So it's going to go in my version, and I'm probably going to cut a better card for it. So I'm thinking of other ways to destroy artifacts or enchantments, like maybe Titan of Industry would be good, or I don't know, something else that can kind of help out with that strategy. I think that I might look at this Aberrant, which might be cool because it can get pretty big and synergizes with attacking, but I don't think I'm in on that. I already added the Canker Bloom, which is really solid. I think I might take a look at one of my favorites is Druid of Purification. It's just like great value, and so maybe I'll pick it just based on the value alone and the fact that I like it, even though it doesn't truly synergize with everything in this deck. Of course, there's always Kogla. I mean, Kogla is just great, and it's got a huge power, but again, not exactly what I want. I think I might take a look at this Nilgauz Maze Crusher just because it's new and see how that goes. So let's take a look at it. It's 1 red and a green for a 4/4, so the stats on this are great. And it enters the battlefield with 5 oil counters on it. You can remove 1 to give it Vigilance and Menace until end of turn. Menace could be that way to get damage through if we've made it bigger and bigger. We can also remove 2 oil counters from it and give it +2/+2. You know, if this is getting doubled twice, it goes from 4 to 8 to 16, that's solid. But what if it's 6 to 12 to 24? Like that gives it a much bigger boost right off the bat. And I could theoretically start this off as doubling up at 8, okay? You can also remove 3 oil counters and destroy target artifact or enchantment. I don't have any other synergy with this, like no augmented or modified sort of effects, no ways to give it more oil counters besides the 1 Canker Bloom I just added in. So I'm not exactly sure. I was also thinking about like this Nissa right here, the new Nissa Ascended Animist. This could be fine because it has this big buff effect. Until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 for each force you control and gain trample. This deck is very forest heavy, which is good. Can also create a pretty big creature or destroy target artifact or enchantment. I don't know though. I don't own one. It's only $5, you know? So maybe that does beat out some of the other cards that are, you know, a little bit more expensive. But I think I am going to look to get just a little bit more artifact or enchantment disruption, even if it is like a Shatter Storm or something like that, because I think that's again, I'm thinking about my meta and trying to find ways that I'm going to gain advantage over them. But that's the way that you kind of have to build decks, you know, is go through and get a core. You know, the power matters core is what I've got here. And so I have cards that are undeniably going to stay in this deck because they're fun. Unnatural Growth. Don't think it might not be the biggest card in this deck. You know what I mean? Like you might not need it. You might be better paid off by some of these other effects, but you know, it's just fun. You know, this is not just about red, green, stompy. This is red, green, get bigger than everything else and do crazy big things. It's just great. And so there's a core of the deck that I want to keep and then want to support. And so the way that I do it is I make sure to double everything's power. Then I make sure that we have the mana ramp and the card draw to get us there. And then the protection and the instant speed stuff to be able to remain in the game. And this deck is fun. It's so much fun. And I'm positive that you're going to like it. So check it out. If you want to get some of these cards, build your own version of this deck, go ahead and check out Cool Stuff Inc. They're the sponsor of the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. When you do, use the coupon code JUMBO5. That's going to save you 5% off your order. Make this deck super duper affordable. I also want to thank my patrons. They're amazing. They support me every day. Thank you, patrons. Thank you for watching. If you like this style of video, I literally talk for forever, go over every single card, even go through what I'm thinking about and why I make certain decisions. Please let me know in the comments down below. Please let me know with those thumbs up. If you like them, then I'll keep doing them. All right, everyone. Have a good one. Bye-bye.